instead of having to have meeting after meeting and PowerPoint after PowerPoint and Excel sheets, you and I could meet in the hallway. We could have a brief conversation and make decisions and both go off and take like material action based on that conversation, because there's a level of trust and understanding. That was something that I learned at Nike, and I think, quite frankly, is a little unique to Nike.
You are the only CIO we've got to talk to around the world so far who is also an investor in Northern Irish football. Carrick Rangers, right? Do I have that correct?
That's correct.
I just start with the brass tacks. Are you like an Northern Irish football fan? Is that already part of your interest?
It was not part of my interest before this. No.
Right. You're a football fan. I think you can say football if you're
I am a football fan, or soccer.
Do you think, like, when you were earlier in your career, like just as a technologist, do you think you looked at the road you were on as something that could ultimately lead to like serious co-ownership of a sports club? Do you know what I mean? Like it's something you associate with. It just illustrates how well you can do as a technologist, but you don't necessarily have that in mind when you start out, right?
No, that definitely was not my motivation at the beginning. Sure. I'm motivated by impact. I would say almost, in terms of my involvement with Carrick, I really have two things that are really important to me. One is my passion for football, and the other one is the desire to make an impact. And when you start to realize maybe sometimes in American sports we don't necessarily realize the impact that these football clubs have in communities and the asset that they can be and the difference they can make in the community. And whether it's things we do like Twilight Soccer on Friday and Saturday nights that gets kids off the streets and busy and playing soccer, or we're now starting the Women's Academy where girls have a pathway for sports, where they didn't necessarily before. So those are the types of impact you can make with something
and then you realize what relegation could mean, right? Like to that community, like emotionally, it's huge. But I always think escaping relegation is one of the best feelings in football, right?
It is a good feeling.
It's hard to know where else to begin, right? But I when I was researching you, Michael, I understand as illustrious as your career as a technologist has been, and we will get into all the detail at Nike, at Estée Lauder, I understand it wasn't what you started out wanting to do. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Walk me through the early aspirations and how they developed.
Yeah. So I was a humanities major in college, sure. With concentration in religion.
Right.
And I don't talk about this a lot, but I really felt like I was going to go into the ministry.
Sure. And, well, this is soul of a CIO. This is the place to.
This would be a place to talk about their soul, right?
Yeah.
No, I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, in Southern Baptist school, in church, and I really thought I was going to go into the ministry. I made a deliberate choice to go to a college with a little bit different point of view. I went to a Catholic college, and I wanted to study world religions, and really, that's my faith is still a very big part of my life. But somewhere midway through there, I decided that my calling was a little different, and part of that was I took a summer job at Malone and Hyde, which is a company no longer exists, but they own AutoZone, they own retail food groups. Some people may have heard of Piggly Wiggly, which was a really popular grocery chain in the U.S. I think there's only probably a few stores left in the South somewhere. But I was able to learn coding on the job, and I started to realize how much creativity you could express through coding and by building and creating something and seeing that work and exist, and you could build something, and I got a passion for it, and I kind of scrambled the last part of my college career to get a minor in what at the time was called management information systems.
Were they doing that at the Catholic college?
Yes,
I was part of it.
Christian Brothers University. Yeah, that's
good. And where did and what was? Did you have any earlier kind of relations to technology, like whether it was gaming or just seeing? Like where was that?
No, I'm too old for gaming.
Yeah,
no, that's actually not true. We had the old school Nintendos and stuff, but no, I really didn't. That was kind of my first foray into it.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, and it wasn't long before you found yourself at Nike.
Yeah.
Right. How long into your career, and how did that journey begin?
Yeah. So after college, with a humanities degree, I didn't get a lot of offers. I had one for international paper based out of New York, and I was doing the math from Memphis to New York, and the salary, there was no way that was going to work. And the other was to AutoZone, which is at the time, and I believe still is, the nation's largest discount auto parts. But it was a subsidiary of Malone and Hyde at the time, so I had that natural connection. I was there about a year and a half. Even though I was there a short time, it was one of the best learning experiences for me, because I came in as one of the few people that knew anything about PCs and local area networks and things of that nature in what was a typically mainframe shop, and the whole concept of PCs and local area networks was evolving. So I got sent into all kinds of situations, right? One second I would be sitting with the president of AutoZone talking about creating management reports. Today we would call it analytics, and creating those. And then the next minute I'm getting a call to go fix a printer on the shipping floor at the warehouse 11 miles away. And I'd go jump in my car and drive over there and try to figure it out. I didn't know anything about printers. I didn't know anything about necessarily the hardware workings but I learned that you could figure it out. And I also learned just that difference of working from the boardroom to the shop floor and doing that all in the course of one day. And I feel like I learned a lot during that period.
It was from there straight to Nike, or was there another?
From there, it was straight to Nike. Yeah.
And so what year are we talking about then? So
we would be talking about 1990 when I joined Nike.
Okay, so Nike is Nike by then, right?
It's definitely a known company. It's $1 billion footwear company, and produced some apparel that had like a Nike logo on it. Sure. But and there was a small international business, but it was basically a U.S. footwear company at $1 billion at that time.
And I guess as being passionate about sports probably appealed to you as an organization, but I always assume a company like that must have a fascinating culture, a fascinating ethos. What were your earliest encounters with it like? How transformative were they, and how you saw the world and how you saw your career?
Yeah, definitely a incredible culture there. I learned a lot during my time in Nike, and as I said, it was like $1 billion company. I was there for 22 years, and when I left, it was over 25 billion. Footwear, apparel, equipment, in the world of digital, all these other things. During that 22 years, I started in technology and I finished in technology, but I had a lot of different roles in the middle, and it was. I often talk to interns and other people early in their career, and I talk about this idea of I wish I could credit the source, but this idea of a T-shaped employee, that to be broad in your knowledge, but also have something that you're deep and have expertise in, and that's what my career ended up in, allowed me to do. Is I would be in one function as an individual contributor, and I'd get promoted up to manager, and then I'd move to a new area, and so really that first couple of years I was in tech, and then there's 10 years in the middle that I was across different roles, and then finally at the end in tech. But Nike taught me a lot of things. I think probably the first thing coming in the door was the importance of being authentic and the importance of relationships. I would say that prior to that, I was still pretty young, pretty immature, and I really thought you compartmentalized work from personal. Okay. And I didn't even really engage with people in personal discussions, and probably in retrospect probably came across as pretty cold and aloof and other things. But you get to Nike, and those lines are blurred in many ways. I mean, I was one of the first people to move onto the campus. Everything, you can live your entire life on the campus if you want, and really built a lot of deep relationships. But you also learn the importance of relationships in getting work done, in influence, and it made us. I think it really was created speed, because instead of having to have meeting after meeting and PowerPoint after PowerPoint and Excel sheets, you and I could meet in the hallway. We could have a brief conversation and make decisions, and both go off and take like material action based on that conversation, because there's a level of trust and understanding, and that was something that I learned at Nike, and I think, quite frankly, is a little unique to Nike.
It sounds more like one of the big tech organizations today, campus ethos, learning culture, right? Would you say parallelisms between?
A lot of parallels, yeah. Very, very much a startup entrepreneurial kind of approach to it as well.
Maybe that's the difference that made Nike, right? Not just producing footwear, but a brand and an idea, you know. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. How far did you get from technology at points in your career there?
I would say pretty far. I was in customer service operations for a while as part of opening up our pan-European distribution center in Lockdal in Belgium, part of a supply chain re-engineering project. And, I was also very fortunate that once I did return to technology and my career was growing, and I was, I kind of inherited teams. And as I inherited those teams, I was managing those teams, but I almost always had a strategic project on the side, either for the CIO at the time or for the COO or the CHRO, CFO. Always had a separate project on the side, because I guess I was kind of known for strategy and vision, and so that it kept things very interesting. I mean, it's part of why I felt like I could stay there for 22 years. Not only different roles, but all of these kind of separate things that again, I go back to I want to make an impact. I want to leave a legacy of some type wherever wherever I touch, and Nike gave me that opportunity in many, many ways.
Soul of the CIO is sponsored by Nextvink. Now, if you work in IT, you'll know too well how disruptions can derail productivity fast. Nextvink's AI-powered platform for digital employee experience keeps you ahead. It uncovers issues others can't see and resolves them automatically with employee-centric AI and always-on automation. Employees stay productive, IT stays proactive and even preventative, and leadership sees results. Nextvink, ahead of every IT disruption, behind every strategy. Learn more at nextvink.com.
What do you think about experience with like running and working in real world infrastructure? How do you think that influenced your understanding of digital infrastructure and IT more generally?
Oh, that's a good question. I think that when you say real world infrastructure, you're talking about kind of the time that I was in the the distribution centers and working with like conveyor belts and everything else. I think that, for one, I consider digital a way of working, right? Technology is the tools and digital's a way of working. And of course, data and / information kind of feeds all of that. So, to me, I think the things I would see working in the physical world, I'm always thinking about, well, how can you be more efficient about that? How can you drive more productivity, more impact, more results, better results, just by automation, quite frankly.
Yeah, so. Yeah. And there must have been times in that long career in Nike where you thought, I'm going to work here forever, or did you never look at it like that? It just kept on extending itself. And
there were many times I thought I would work there forever. I love the company. I mean, I love the company. I worked with some amazing people. You build your friendships there. My love of sports could be enabled by all of this, right? We played soccer at lunch. We hit the gym sometimes at lunch. We went for a run. After college, I became a runner, and I'd go. You could have meetings over runs. Some people have meetings over coffee. we'd say, let's grab 30 minutes and go out for a quick run around the campus trail.
And how was technology towards the end of your time at Nike? How had technology transformed what Nike was and how it functioned? In most profound ways.
Yeah, very, very profound ways. I think that one of the things that I had the privilege of doing was driving our global e-commerce strategy, our very first global e-commerce strategy. At the time, we had different. We were a pretty early adopter in the world of the internet, and we had all these different sites out there that for different categories, right? So Nike football, Nike women's, Nike golf, and they were not connected. And so we had, we couldn't see a 360 view of the consumer, and we didn't necessarily have a common experience. And of course, we had a very expensive infrastructure to do that. And so one of the first things we did was pull that together into a true global e-commerce. You could still skin it and brand it with Nike football, Nike golf, but one view of the consumer. And and Nike is such a consumer-centric company, right? That's I think there's a lot of things that made that a great company, but that focus on the consumer. And I'll tell you, I never understood how deep it went until I was assigned to a project to turn around the U.S. apparel business. It was struggling at the time, and it's the first time I got involved with, well, how do they understand the consumer? Well, we actually had identified kind of the key influencers in high schools in key cities. So, the theory was a certain high school will influence a certain community, which influences that influential city, which influences a nation, right? So you could go down to Santa Monica High School, influencing the LA area, influencing the U.S., which influences the globe.
Wow.
So you target, through understanding those relationships with coaches and everybody else, you understand who the major influencers are. And then you go in under a different, you're not going in as Nike, you're just going in as a research firm. And you actually have conversations with these influencers. You're sitting there in their house and you're talking to them and saying, well, what do you wear out on date night? What do you wear to school? What do you wear to practice? What do you wear when you're lounging around the house? And you start to understand what are the things that really, and you're obviously asking the follow-up questions. Well, why? Why did you choose that? Why are you doing that? Are your friends doing that? What's the and this deep understanding of the consumer so that you can start to create things that they don't even know that they need.
Give us an example. What would come out of research? What specific products or ideas came out of this kind of research?
Well, I would say a big part of what came out of it was our retail distribution. Yeah. We found out one of the reasons that at the time Adidas was doing really well was they had a store that was convenient, right there in the middle of Santa Monica and near the high school, and so they went in and shopped there, and they would ultimately buy there. So thinking about our retail distribution and going from like these big Nike towns to, more local, hyper local type of shops.
And you're able to scale that kind of a strategy, nationwide almost. You're focusing on the areas where they're most influence.
Yeah.
It's interesting that focus on influence seems to sort of predate like the influencer culture that came in subsequent decades, right? Yeah.
And then sometimes you learn things that are not, you choose not to do, right? So big part of it was denim was really big. Well, we made a conscious decision as a company that denim wasn't in our, wasn't consistent with our mission and our DNA, right? Our DNA was, how do you support the athlete, and how do you support performance?
At some point, you starting to think of what you could achieve outside of Nike, or do you see there's maybe political limitations in an organization like that? Can sometimes you go as far as you can? I mean, what was the thought process there?
There's two things. There's two things. I really wanted to. I had developed through these different efforts, different strategy projects I had on the side that were not tech related. I had wanted to become a general manager, and you know, and the reality was I had reached a pretty high level grading and salary and all that on the tech side, and you know, and so I knew to take a GM job I was going to have to step backwards in terms of, and I didn't care. I just wanted the experience. At that point, I, you know, kind of had the financial freedom to do those things, and I was long past my ego at that point. I think that so I wanted that experience. The issue was there were only a handful of those jobs available in that were at a size that they would trust me with. Right? You're not going to put somebody that's not been a general manager, particularly if they haven't led marketing or finance. You're not going to put them in a $1 billion business. You're going to put them in a $50 million or $100 million business. Well, at that point we didn't have a lot of those. We had Umbro, and then we had Converse. I had some conversations about Converse Hong Kong. That kind of fell through. They made kind of a Converse Greater China approach. And then with Umbro, it was really close, and we decided to sell the brand. And so I'm glad I didn't jump into it, because I would have been spun off or laid off or something. But once those two opportunities, I started looking around. Everything was a massive business. There was no way there, and so that was kind of the first thing that made me think about potentially doing something different outside of Nike. As much as I love the company, that was probably why, you know, over the years, because Nike was Nike, you know, you would get tons of calls from recruiters, and I just never answered. But I think once I saw that GM opportunity disappear, I started to answer the call and listen.
And I guess the potential for impact in digital was only growing as well, right? When did you first start thinking of turning that into a sort of C-suite role in technology outside of Nike, and what was the road to doing that?
Yeah, I don't know that I thought about it specifically as you know, related to digital specifically. It was just about impact. So when I got the call about I between Nike and Estée Lauder, I spent about 4 years at Mylan, which is a generic pharmaceutical company. And as it turned out, it was great preparation for Estée Lauder, because really the whole back end of what you do in cosmetics is closer to pharma, and what you're doing on the front end with the type of innovation, the consumer focus, the retail, all of those things are very much like Nike and, you know, in the fashion world. And so it really prepared me. But what, you know, it was an interesting call. The recruiter that called me knew me. He had helped me before, place some people. And so he told me, he said, you need to just hear me out here for a second. And he goes, it's a generic pharmaceutical company. And I thought, okay, I don't want anything to do with pharmaceutical, much less generic. Generic. Yeah. And then the second thing he got to was it's in Pittsburgh. And at the time, now I love Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh is the most underrated city in America. It's a fantastic place. At the time, I didn't know that. I had all the, you know, preconceived negative ideas. And he said, but he goes, the CEO has come up through the company. She wants to transform the company, and she wants a partner to drive business transformation. And by the way, you're going to also transform the technology organization. And I thought, that sounds like incredible work. He said, just come talk to her. And I did. And just blown away by her and the executive team and the quality of the team and the way the people work together. And you know, and I had experienced that obviously at times in Nike as well. And you know, in fact, I think Nike, when I started with Nike in Oregon when they sent me back to they sent me back to Memphis, and that was the first time I was part of a general management team, right, running that facility there for customer service operations. And it's the first time I understood, as one of the functions alongside head of customer service, head of operations, head of finance, head of HR, all reporting to GM. It's the first time I really understood what it meant to be a part of an executive team, and to really treat that as your first team. And I really saw that opportunity at Mylan, and I loved the vision that Heather had. It was compelling, and the job was small compared to what I was leaving. Right, the team. I had one department that was probably bigger than the entire IT technology function at Mylan. I mean, you were going from $25+ billion to $5 billion company.
Yeah, sure.
Now, those 4 years were pretty interesting. We grew from $5 billion to over $10 billion in 4 years. Some through acquisition, some through organic growth, and my role changed. I took over global business services, which is our integrated shared services across finance and HR and procurement, and then eventually I moved into very small P&L management, but with some digital commerce, digital marketing, and our innovation. So I got my little bit of GM experience.
And meanwhile, you've become a father, right? You're about 30 years into your career.
Yeah.
You've become a father.
Was it that many years? Wow.
I think
Okay.
about it.
Yeah, probably.
I was doing some sums in
Yeah.
my head there.
Yeah.
Don't quote me.
Over 25 for
Your
sure.
life, man. But and at that point,
It's gone fast.
you press pause for a while, and as
Yeah.
I understand it, it was predicated on a son's wrestling.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit
Yeah.
about that and how this came about, and how how was the work-life balance up to that point, if you were to reflect on it? Yeah.
I think at least at the time, I felt like the balance was pretty good up until then. So,
Yeah.
so the scenario was that this job with Mylan was in Pittsburgh, and family was in Oregon still. Didn't want to move, and I was commuting. I would fly out Sunday night on a red eye. I could be in the office by like 9 a.m. That was with connections, and I was doing crazy things like in the winter I didn't want to go through Chicago, so I'd go all the way down to Houston and then back up because I didn't want to get stuck in Chicago or in New York. So I would take these crazy southern routes. But and then I would come back on Friday night. Now, the nice thing I liked was I could sleep on a red eye. And then on Friday nights when I was headed back, I could knock through my to-do list on the airplane, right? You had 5-6 hours to do that. So, which let me be home when I was home. So I kind of justified that as, well, when I was at Nike, I was working crazy hours, coming back at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock anyway. So I was like, okay, well, I wasn't present on the weekends, right? I was constantly on my BlackBerry at the time, or on a phone call or something, and so I felt like my work-life balance was pretty good, and I had the freedom to fly back for like major school events, that type of thing. But what happened was, here I was in really my dream job, right? I had IT, global business services, digital marketing, digital innovation, I had all of this, and and part of a great executive team, and we came up to February, I believe it was, and I flew back for the weekend for my son's wrestling tournament in the districts as a junior, and he upset the number one guy in the state to get into the final and qualify for the state tournament. And I realized when that happened, I realized immediately I'm not going to be able to be there. We had a big kind of public hackathon that was launching on Friday night, and we had an executive offsite that we were traveling to that weekend. And I thought, state tournament, he may never get back there again. Up until that point, I'd always felt like there was, like if I did miss something, I felt like, well, there'd be another.
Yeah.
And this was the first time I realized there may not be another one. And so I thought about it for about a week, and I decided that I was gonna go ahead and work until the summer when his summer started, and I was gonna take off summer from beginning of one summer to the end of the following summer, basically his senior year, and so that's what I did. I one of the best decisions I ever made. It was hard. It was scary. It was a hard decision because I was giving up something that I loved so much, and it's scary as well because you don't know if you're going to get something that good again, right? Like especially at that age. To your point, I didn't think about it as being 30 years, but yeah, it was close to 30 years. It just goes really fast, right? But I did know I was at an age where it's not exactly the easiest to go get another dream job like that.
Yeah.
And so it was a little scary, but I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Yeah. How was that year going? What was it?
It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
What did you get up to?
We, in the summers, we traveled. We Machu Picchu, 2 trips to Thailand. One of them during his spring break. Did African safaris.
Amazing.
Just lots of travel. Lots of snow skiing in the winter months, and the main thing was I was at every event. I didn't miss any kind of school event, and was able to get really involved in some of these things. And whether it was football, wrestling, track, I wouldn't trade it for anything.
And it set you up for what is, I guess, kind of, for the last chapter in your CIO career. It's an amazing one at Estée Lauder, right? Which it is a funny, that succession of businesses that you worked for. They're not obvious, are they? Often CIOs, it's the same industry. Yeah. It's similar brands. It's peer organizations. Here we've got a quite dramatic deviation from the path from Nike to Estée Lauder. And in terms of, again, deploying data and technology to better understand the consumer, to innovate, what were some of the milestone achievements during your time at Estée Lauder?
Oh, milestone achievements. I think one was just our ability to I don't know that we had all the technical muscle in-house that we needed. And so to build that technical savviness, a big part of what we did was we established technology and innovation centers in Long Island City, which is here in Manhattan, just across the East River, in Bucharest, Romania, and in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and in Shanghai. And so bringing in some of those key technical skills that we needed that really allowed us then to go do things like bring in new demand planning systems, implement new integrated business solution planning, bring in a whole new world of data analytics. We were early in the AI space, creating our own AI AR platform. We've created things like the voice-enabled makeup assistant, which allows people that are visually impaired or blind to be able to have the confidence to apply their own makeup. I don't know if you're familiar with the tool.
Mm-hmm. Looked it up actually.
Yeah, it's an app that's available on iOS and Android. But what it came down to was back to that core of understanding consumer.
Yeah.
So that is a $1.2 billion market of people that are visually impaired that use what we would consider as prestige beauty, makeup, and cosmetics. And at the core of what they want is independence and confidence. And so instead of having to have somebody give them feedback on their application, which, by the way, isn't just a one-time thing in the morning. It's as you go through the day, you have to check your makeup, and so you're taking selfies, sending them to somebody, give you feedback. we wanted to do something where you could actually, map the face, basically, and we could give feedback, very detailed feedback on, is your foundation coverage even? Is your eyeliner on properly? Is your lipstick within, so that gave a level of and that was built on our our platform, which then you can then leverage for many different things, including there's some things that are not public, but one of the things that is this idea of Trend Studio, which is the concept that not only can you identify a trend quickly, but how can you find the products that you need to be able to respond to that trend that you already have in your portfolio. If you think about it, trends in the beauty business are down to about 2 weeks, whether it's an ingredient, a color, a benefit claim, those types of things. And so to be able to respond to that, you cannot create a product and get to market in that amount of time. But when you have this massive portfolio of products across 25 different brands, you can identify the things that meet that trend, generate the creative, and get it out there in a matter of hours instead of a matter of weeks. All with human interaction, of course.
And tell us a bit about that very active retirement. What other extra professional interests are you passionate about at the moment and that you're working on?
Well, obviously, Carrick Rangers Football Club for sure, but and the impact it has in the community, and I'm looking forward to in the process of trying to create a charity associated with that, and have a foundation that will provide micro grants to that community and really make a direct impact into that community across small businesses and other youth organizations and things of that nature. So that's it. That's in the works. But I'm very passionate about Tech Pact, which is something I founded in 2020, along with Earl Newsom and Seth Carpian and Maguth Faithlingham. The four of us came together. I brought that group together in 2020 to talk about how do we create a world in which anyone that has a passion for technology has the opportunity to succeed. And I was really inspired by a conversation I had with Janet Sherlock, actually in a global town hall, and she was talking about how there's so many underrepresented groups in technology, and so I took and she said, what if as CIOs we rallied in the way that you've rallied people around Tech Day of Pink, which is my other major focus area. What if we rallied the technology community like that to make a difference? And I took that away and thought about it for a while before I approached these other three gentlemen, and we created the Tech Pact, which is really a coalition of CIOs that are committed to creating that opportunity for anyone that has a passion for technology to succeed. And we take a cradle to career approach, right? So the reality is many communities, or whether it's women, African Americans, they start to fall away in the early parts of the journey of STEM, or so all the way back in middle school. So how do you start to provide the opportunities way back there so that when people become and get to a career stage, they are prepared to compete and thrive in that area? And I right now, Earl and I have talked about this a lot, but in this day and age, obviously there's a major backlash against DEI, this idea of DEI. The idea of diversity and representation is not at odds with meritocracy. Mm-hmm. These two things can and do live together in the right environment when it's part of your DNA to say, okay, I'm going to be inclusive. When I interview, I'm going to make sure I'm talking to all the best candidates, and obviously selecting the best candidate based on meritocracy. Same with promotions, same with everything. But but you have to have the pipeline. If you're going to create a diverse workforce, you have to have the pipeline, and you have to prepare people early. And so that's what TechPack is focused on. It's not a check the box exercise. That's where a lot of companies, I believe, have made mistakes over the years. Is that you just check the box, but no, this is about being inclusive, about still being committed to diversity, but not but preparing where everybody can have that opportunity to succeed and to thrive in their career. And so that's what TechPack is about, this cradle to career approach.
You've led so many projects. You've had such a rich, impactful career. I'm really keen to end by asking you, Michael, what's your definition of success? What constitutes it to you?
Success is, are we thinking business success or personal success?
Whatever you think it should be defined as,
Yeah.
Elements of anything.
Yeah. I think that success is having left a positive impact on everybody you've touched. Earlier you asked me about one of the things that attracted me to the Estée Lauder company is the mission there is we bring the best to everyone that we touch and bring our best to everyone we touch. And that, that resonated with me because that's, I feel like that's the legacy I want to leave, is that I've made a positive impact on as many people, as many communities as I can. So.